Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. My name is Ardo Rentila, and thank you for coming to the Fairmede Hilltop Neighborhood Council meeting. We're excited tonight to introduce Prologis, the new owners of Hilltop Mall. I see we have several people in attendance from our neighborhood as well as other neighborhoods. We have Nat Bates, City Councilman, who actually was one of the founders of the original Hilltop Mall, or helped get up here. We've got Eduardo Martinez, another city councilman. We've got some neighborhood council folks, and we've got the Hilltop District Working Group up here, so we're excited to get this going. So before we start, I wanted to say a few words. For those of you that haven't heard, let me take this mask off. I've been vaccinated, have you? Anyway, for those of you that haven't heard, the city had created a task force here in Richmond, and the task force was created to explore the funding of Richmond Police Department and how it's handled and how they can redirect some of the funding to different various programs. And so tonight we have a presentation from Jim Nantel, who oversees the program. He's the liaison to the city and for the task force. So we have a PowerPoint presentation from him, and then after the presentation, we have Chief Bisa French, who will talk about the ramifications of these recommendations to the City Council and what they will look like. So if we're ready to start this PowerPoint presentation.
Hi, my name is Jim Nantel, and I've been asked to make a presentation to you to update you on the status of our budget-related recommendations from a public safety task force. My name is Jim Nantel, as I indicated, and I am the lead staff liaison to the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. We met with the City Council on Monday night, and that was an hour's presentation, so I'm going to try to do this very quickly within the 10 minutes that I've been asked to restrict myself to. Give you some background, the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force presented recommendations to the City Council, and specifically they included both budget recommendations as well as some policy recommendations. The budget recommendations totaled $10.3 million and some proposed new programs. And the recommendation from the task force was to fund these new programs by reducing $10.3 million from the police department's budget. The council directed staff at that May 10 meeting to come back after working with the implementation team of the Reimagining Task Force and come back with a proposal as to how to fund these new programs in the new fiscal year budget. The recommendation by the task force was in 4 areas. One was to expand the youth employment by $1.9 million, almost $2 million. Expand the Office of Neighborhood Safety by $2.4 million, and to establish 2 new programs. One relative to Community Crisis Response Team, and the second one was programs to deal with the homeless and the unhoused in our population in our community. Staff recommended in terms of the first year funding, essentially just under $5.6 million to fund the programs for the first year. $1.9 million for the Youth Works program, $1.6 million for the Office of Neighborhood Safety. And that was because it would take some time to be able to create the new classifications for the positions that were being proposed and to recruit for those. And so it would not take the full $2.4 million in the first year. In terms of the new programs, the Community Crisis Response Team and the unhoused intervention programs, the staff has recommended, because of the time that it would take to implement those, that in the first year, the budget would include $1 million to be able to implement each of those. To give you a sense about the specific programs, as I indicated, The recommendation is to add 1.9 million to the Youth Works program in the city. It would allow us to be able to employ up to 500 young adults between the ages of 16 and 24. And that would be compared to the 175 that we've been able to provide work experience to in previous years. The Office of Neighborhood Safety, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, it is a non-law enforcement agency. The purpose is to reduce gun violence. They have an existing budget of $1.6 million, and their staff outreaches and works with young adults between the ages of 17 and 21 to be able to work with them to avoid the shootings that have occurred in this population for many years. They've had some real success in being able to reduce that activity in the past. The benefits of the additional funding would allow staff to create a second shift for after 5 or 6 o'clock at night. Currently, the outreach coordinators are working primarily with the Black community in Richmond, the youth that are at risk to being involved in some of these shootings in the past. They do not have the staff currently to be able to outreach and work with the Latinx community. And this would provide additional outreach coordinators to be able to work with that portion of our community. And it would also allow them to spend some time working with older adults in our community. Currently, the efforts have been focused on the ages of 17 to 21, 22. The additional funding would allow us to add 6 outreach coordinators to help with that program. The community crisis response team is a key part of the recommendation relative to the new model that is envisioned by the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force, the new model for providing public safety. This would create a team of 2 mental health and harm reduction specialists and a medic to be able to respond to the mental health calls in the community, both in terms of addressing the domestic violence as well as street conflicts and noise complaints. So it's anticipated that this would be able to significantly reduce the demand on our police officers today. The second program is, as I've indicated, there are 3 specific ideas that would be funded to be able to deal with the homeless and the unhoused in our community. There would be a streets team to be able to deal with the issues that that police are currently responding to in the community by meeting with and working with those that are involved in the homeless activities that result in complaints and calls to our police department. They would also be able to provide a mobile shower program to be able to allow the unhoused to be able to get the services of a shower and clean up for their daily efforts to be able to find jobs and to be able to gain ongoing employment. The third proposal is relative to adults and family transitional villages. The hope is to be able to provide some locations where we can allow both the unhoused adults, but also the families that may be homeless today, to be able to safely live in a location as we work with that population to be able to transition them into permanent and supportive housing. So obviously the task force has recommended that this be funded by reducing the police department. The recommendation from the task force was that the funding would be achieved by reducing 25 police officers, as well as reducing overtime, special pay, and some operating accounts in order to achieve the $10.3 million. The police chief has indicated that in order to achieve the required savings, that she believes that she would need to cut 35 police officer positions, as opposed to that recommended by the task force, and she would be eliminating some contracts for a value of $1.1 million, getting the total $10.3 million. the best guess at this point is the chief right now has 12 vacancies in the department, and that would save $3 million. Could use that money to be available to address this. In order to achieve the first year figure of about $6 million, it's anticipated that she would need to lay off an additional 12 officers in order to provide that funding. In terms of the recommendation from staff for that first year funding of just under $6 million, we propose using $1.6 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. This is federal funding money that would be has become available to the city to be able to address the impacts associated with the pandemic. We would also be proposing to use another one-time source of funds, which is the projected fund balance for the current fiscal year. There will be some unexpended funding that will be available to carry over into the new year, and the staff is proposing to use $1.3 million of that funding. And then there is some funding for housing in lieu fees and low and moderate housing, about $350,000. In order to, again, achieve the $5.5 of $6 million, the police department would need to contribute $2.3 million. The thought from the city manager in relative to using some one-time funding in this first year is it would allow some time to transition the new programs, particularly the ones that we are hoping would reduce the demand for police services. We'd like to transition those into the first year by using some one-time money so that we can demonstrate that, in fact, we would have maybe additional resources we could reduce from the police department in the future. The council was concerned and felt that it was that the staff needed to identify a stable source of funding for the new programs that would be key to move forward. And so consequently, in working with the council at the meeting on Monday night, the council directed staff to work with the task force and to return to the city council with an implementation plan and a budget that would show the city council what it would take to fund the first year costs for all of the 4 programs that have been proposed by the Reimagining Task Force, and how that could be accomplished within the police department. The council would like to get a clear understanding of what would it really take to do so. The hope is that we could hopefully achieve that without the need to lay off existing staff people. Hopefully we could do it with the 12 vacancies we have today and maybe be able to fund the remaining amount through attrition that would hopefully happen over the next year or so. So the city council will be reviewing the staff's recommendation and follow up on this issue at their budget discussion on the 15th of June. And so if you are interested, you may want to sign in and participate in that discussion with the city council relative to how they finalize their recommendation, direction to staff, I should say, for the balancing the new fiscal year budget. So again, if you have any questions about the information that I've shared, please use my contact information on the screen now. Again, I'm Jim Nantel, so it's jnantel@richmondworks.org. Just drop me an email. I'd be happy to share this full staff report that was presented to the city council if you're interested in that. If you have any specific questions, please follow up and give me an email, and I'll be happy to try to respond to those. Again, my thanks to Arto for allowing me to present tonight, and I wish you all good luck in the remainder of your meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim Nantel. In response to Jim's PowerPoint presentation, we thought it would be important for the community to understand what the police perspective will be. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief French.
Good evening, and thank you, everyone. So I was asked to come here to talk about the effects a $10.3 million reduction to our budget would have. And obviously, it would have a huge effect, losing $10.3 million. But I want to start off by saying that the police department does not object or oppose the recommendations that the task force is making in terms of providing additional services to our community, because we know our community has been underserved for many, many years. I know that for my 23 years of working as a police officer in this town and living here, that we are under-resourced. I see that in responding to calls and seeing people in crisis knowing that they haven't received the services that they need and deserve. So we are in no way in opposition to providing extra more services to our community. I do, though, have some opposition to having the police department fund all these services. I think that there are other funding measures that we should be looking at. I think some of them were talked about in Jim's presentation, and I think that we should continue to explore other funding methods, because the effects to the community a $10.3 million reduction will have, I think, is huge. So first of all, I do have 12 vacancies within the police department right now. That amounts to about $3 million. So that money can be used to immediately fund some of the recommendations the task force is making, but that is going to have an effect still on services that we provide as a police department. Richmond is a difficult place to hire police officers because of our history of being a violent city. You know, people don't want to come here. It's been made even more difficult with the talks of layoffs. I actually have about 18 officers that are in various phases of the hiring process with many other police agencies locally. That means that they are not waiting to see if they're going to have a job July 1 or not. They are choosing to leave on their own. So I already know that I'm going to be fighting an uphill battle in the next couple years just to try to get more police officers hired. So that's my main concern, is that we look at not laying off police officers. But to achieve the $10.3 million, obviously the vacancies can cover the $3 million, but to cover the remainder of the $10.3 million, there's two things that I would need to do. I would need to lay off 23 police officers, and I would also need to cut several contracts that we've had for many years now. I'll start with some of the contracts. First, we have our ShotSpotter contract, and I know ShotSpotter covers some of this area, the Hilltop area, but it doesn't cover all of the local area. But we put ShotSpotter. ShotSpotter is a gun detection system that allows us to know exactly where gunshots are going off at when they're shot. So it directs us and the officers to that location immediately. It helps with our response time, makes it quicker, because sometimes people don't call in to the police department when they hear shots fired. They know we have the system. Just last week we had a homicide, and we received 0 calls of the multiple gunshots fired. We responded later and found somebody shot to death. So that's the importance of that system. Additionally, PAL. PAL is a big one for me because I sit on the board of PAL. The police department used to run PAL all together. Several years ago, probably at least 10 years ago now, PAL became its 501c3 and broke away from the police department, but the police department has continued to subsidize PAL for many years, and to the tune of $300,000 a year. We would no longer be able to provide that subsidy funding to PAL, because it equates to more than one police officer position. Some of the other contracts that would be affected are more in-house technical things. One of them is a contract that was recently approved by the City Council, and it's called Police Strategies. It's a way for an outside person to look at all of our uses of force, provide a dashboard for the community, to look at how we use force, when it's used. It's more of a transparency tool. We want to be open and transparent with the incidents that we have that involve force. So those are some of the main ones. There's some smaller contracts that would also be cut. But I think I want to spend the time that I have kind of talking about the effects to the community, the impacts to the community and the services that we're able to provide. So with that many officers cut, we would have to focus pretty much most of our efforts in having a robust patrol teams. And that's because when you call 911, we want to know that somebody's going to respond to that emergency call. So we'll be focused on emergency calls for service. That means, somebody has a gun, somebody has a knife, somebody's, getting physically hurt, somebody's house is actually being broken into at that moment. Those emergency type calls that we want to get to and hopefully, catch a perpetrator in the moment. Other than that, there's not going to be, we won't have the ability to provide a lot of follow-up and investigation after the fact. Our investigations team will be down to probably about a dozen officers, which means that they would have to focus on the shootings and homicides. We had 2 shootings today, and we've had now 7 homicides this year and close to 40 shootings this year. So the 4 homicide detectives that we have obviously have their hands full. So they'll be focused on the more, pertinent emergency calls and investigations that we need them to focus on. Other than that, the other big unit that we need to focus on in investigations is our domestic and sexual violence unit. Domestic violence is huge. We always want to make sure that we're able to charge a suspect in time so they don't get out of jail and go back and re-abuse the victim. So the other focus is on domestic and sexual violence crimes. Property crimes, we would basically only handle if there was somebody in custody, and that just involves taking the case to the district attorney's office for charging. Other than that, we won't have any other units. And so how this affects patrol is, while we'll still have 9 beat officers across the city at any given time, which we do right now, which is not enough, those officers will have to do more of an investigation on the front end, where now, let's say we respond to some type of investigative issue. There's a battery or any kind of investigative issue. The officers that respond take a preliminary report. Those reports then go to our detective bureau for follow-up. And the detectives are able to do follow-up interviews. They go to the what we call the CIC, the Children's Interview Center, and take children for interviews. Those take hours long. They do, the detectives do more of that the follow-up work that takes a lot longer time to handle. Not having the detectives to do that, patrol officers are going to have to do that on the front end. So that means that there will be longer response times when you call the police. I'll give you another example. Traffic collisions that take a long time to handle. Currently, we have beat officers. If it's a major injury crash, they'll respond to the crash. They'll take the report. They won't take the report. They'll respond to the crash, and then they could call a traffic officer to respond, to do more of the reconstruction, do witness interviews, and take their time to reconstruct the crime scene and complete the report. Without a traffic unit, the patrol officer will have to do that. Those investigations take hours to complete. That means that beat officer will be tied up on that investigation for hours and not be able to respond to the other calls for service on their beats. So those are the things that kind of take place behind the scenes right now that allow for beat officers to be in service more, to take more calls in a timely manner. So the response times are huge. Some of the other impacts are we have to reduce our services. We can't continue to respond to all the calls that we currently respond to. Last year, if some of you guys will remember when I came and spoke about our reduction in services because of the reduction in our staffing last year, in the budget cuts, we lost 34 positions. We had to reduce some of those services that we responded to. And so that included making mandatory reports online. So if your car is broken into in the middle of the night, then instead of calling us to take a report like we've done my entire career, we now refer you, our dispatch center refers you to go online to make that report online, and you don't have any contact with a police officer. To me, that's not customer service. Most people don't call the police, hardly ever. Maybe once, twice. Most people in our community don't call the police all that much. especially up here in this area. But when they do, when you are victimized, you expect an officer to respond. And having to go to that model where we're saying that we're not responding was really difficult for me. But that's where we are in terms of our staffing, where we just don't have enough people to respond to all the calls that we've previously responded to. So to reduce additional calls for service, because again, they're going to be tied up on these longer, investigations, there's additional calls that we are not going to be responding to if these cuts occur. Those are issues with homelessness issues. If they're not criminal issues, if somebody's not being hurt or injured at the time, we're not going to be responding to those issues. Additionally, calls at schools, unless it's an active shooter, we're not going to be responding for many of the other calls at schools. And I'm sorry, I got to get my list out for the other stuff. Loud noise and music calls, fireworks calls, calls at our local hospital, trespassing calls at abandoned properties, criminal disturbance, non-criminal disturbances, panhandling and loitering calls, suspicious persons or vehicle calls if it's an anonymous caller and we don't have specific criminal details, drug usage, illegal marijuana grows. So those are some of the things that we're looking at, trying to find alternative responses that don't involve the police department. And some of these can be taken up with the recommendations of the task force once the team gets up and running. But again, that's not up and running right now. So if we have the cuts come July 1, there's going to be a gap in services for people to answer these types of calls. The quality of life issues are also ones that I'm having a difficult time with, and these are drug houses, disorderly conduct, prostitution, again, not necessarily a problem in this area, but in other areas of our city. And these are things that can't be effectively done by police officers when they are responding to calls for service throughout the day. They can't take the time to do the investigation for these longer term problems. A lot of the quality of life issues that we face here in our community take more investigation, take a lot more time to work on to find a resolution. We work with a lot of different community partners as well as other city departments to work on these issues, and the beat officers just don't have the time to do that. But with no other team to facilitate that, those things won't be taken care of. We can't address those issues. So that's pretty much the impacts of what a $10.3 million reduction will look like. My hope is that we can find other ways to fulfill the recommendations of the task force without defunding the police department. Like I said when I started, I think that there are some great recommendations. I think our city needs a lot of services, but I think our city also needs the police department to respond when you call us, and that's what we would like to continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief French. The job of neighborhood councils is to present facts, and we got the facts from Jim Nantel, and we've got the facts from Chief French. So it's up to you to start emailing your city council members on how you feel. If you feel that cutting officers is just, email them. If you feel like not cutting officers is wrong, then I implore you to email them. I implore you to watch the city council meetings, watch the task force meetings, because this is our city. We deserve to know what's going on. With that being said, I'd like to welcome the folks from Prologis, if you'd like to step up on stage. So, as everybody knows, we have new owners of the Hilltop Mall. We're excited to see what they have to say, and You know, this is just the beginning of several conversations with community members and communities and cities, areas. So if you folks would like to introduce yourselves and take it away.
Hello. First, I would like to thank Arto, the Fairmede Hilltop Neighborhood Council, as well as the City of Richmond, the folks in the crowd, the community, those online, everyone here today. You know, we appreciate the time. We respect the your thoughts, your feelings, as it relates to the Hilltop Mall and the surrounding area. You know, and before I get going, I wanted to make a couple general comments. Everyone here is going to do their best, and we are not seeking perfection. I think that's important because this discussion really is how we come together. And you're going to hear that a few times from the crew here, the word together. And there are no right or wrong answers. Everybody here, and I'm going to say it again, is here to do our best. And my favorite quote is, if you want to go now, go alone. If you want to go farther, go together. And I think that is something we should keep in mind today and as we enter this journey with the Hilltop Mall. So we all have childhood memories or present-day memory of going to a mall where you grew up, where you live today. You know, the mall is part of the community. It's where you hang. It's where you see friends. We all have our favorite mall food. Mine was Sbarro Pizza. We'd rush to the mall to see the new Jordans that just came out. I mean, this is real human stuff. And, you know, over time, you develop a relationship, you know, with that mall. It becomes part of you. And the goal of the Prologis folks on the stage today is to carry on that relationship. So we're going to talk through that. We have some ideas, but we're really in listening mode. And this project is special. We were approached by the former owner who was looking for a buyer to revitalize Hilltop. And knowing that a mall is such an important part of the community, it really piqued our interest. And we met with select staff, and we became really excited about the potential in this space. And there is sad news around the country on what's happening to malls. But together, I'm going to say it again, you know, we have the opportunity to bring a newer, fresher form to the mall. And this is an amazing space. We've got 77 acres or so right off a major freeway. And typically, most developers, owners, like ourselves, you know, they want to develop what we're good at. And this project is actually the exact opposite. And what I mean by that is we're going to propose with the community, with everybody here, a mixed-use project that really should be the first or at least a world-class project. And our trade is logistics. That's who we are. But we want to bring a bunch of uses together. And to be very clear, we don't have a definitive site plan. We want to talk through it. You know, hopefully we can agree. There needs to be some economic engine to the project. You know, it has to work financially. And logistics will be a component of the project, but we have a wide open template to discuss what those other uses might look like. So it really is a brainstorming effort. You know, we get to be artists. We get to kind of play with our creative minds.
Should we get the slides up?
Yeah, let's do that. Arto, can we
have the slides, please?
While Arto's doing that, so who we are, you can head to the next slide, Arto. We are a real estate logistics company headquartered in San Francisco. We opened in 1983. This project is 30 minutes away from that global headquarters. All the project team, and there's more that aren't on this stage, are local. Most of us grew up in Northern California. So we have real pride in what happens at the mall. And we have over 2,000 diverse employees around the globe. That's in 19 different countries. And one important advantage is that we can use best practices, learnings around the globe and bring them to Richmond. We have multi-story projects in Japan, China. We're looking at building recreational soccer and basketball fields on top of buildings in some urban cities. There's just a lot we can pull from together, and we need your help. And we're able and willing to bring it to Richmond. It's really exciting, and I think as we enter this journey together, there will be new beginnings for the Hilltop Mall. On the next slide here, Arto, we have a lot of experience and a dedicated team to this project. I'm Darren Kenny. I'm responsible for capital deployment or new investments in the state of California. In a moment, you're going to hear from Samita Thakral. She's our day-to-day lead on this project. She's going to help lead the Hilltop Mall redevelopment. She's got an extremely creative mind, but she's going to work with the community on putting together what will be a world-class mixed-use project. You're also going to hear from Banke Abioye. She's going to walk you through our community engagement program that's very specific to Prologis. It's extremely unique. It's really a program that deepens and strengthens our bond with the community. And so with that, thank you all in advance for your time today. We look forward to your questions, and I'm going to hand it to Samita.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Darren. Thank you so much for having us here. We really appreciate your time. Thanks for being here. Could I get the next slide, please? So we just wanted to talk a little bit about our values as a company. Darren talked a little bit about how we're global. We have a lot of expertise. But I just wanted to emphasize that we're very much values and mission driven. And the three main values, which I cannot read those slides. I think I'm too old to read that distance. But the three main things that we care most about: one, the areas that we develop our properties in, we care about uplifting those communities. And one way we do that is through our community workforce initiative, which Banke will talk about in just a minute. The two other driving values for us, one is innovation. We really care about looking for new and better ways to do things that can make our lives and everybody's lives better. We invest in technology that is green. We invest in new ideas that create energy efficiency. And our third value is sustainability. We're amongst our peers, we're leaders in sustainability. All our buildings are built to high green standards. We have some of the largest solar installations in the world. And so those are three of our values that we stand by. Next slide, please. So that's an example of our community workforce initiative. Banke, I'll hand that over to you.
Thank you, Smita. So our community workforce initiative was really developed as a global effort to upskill and to train the next generation of logistics talent. We have pledged to train 25,000 individuals by 2025 in jobs specific to the transportation, the distribution, and the logistics sectors. And how we're going to do that is using an online training platform that we've developed that includes basic workforce training as well as industry-specific training in areas including workforce safety and forklift operations. And really, the mission of our program, of the Community Workforce Initiative, is not only to develop an abundance of qualified talent in the logistics sector, but to also revitalize career pathways and to invest in the communities that we're in. And so if we go to the next slide, we'll see an example of one of our partnerships with EXP. We partnered with them to create and implement a high school-based program where we've worked with and trained and graduated over 800 students many of whom have gone to land successfully paid internships in the transportation, distributions, and logistics sectors, as I mentioned before. And our commitment to investing in the communities that we're in goes beyond our workforce initiatives. If we go to the next slide, we'll see that, again, not only are we committed to uplifting the communities that we're in, but we're also committed to supporting the communities during this unprecedented time that we've had with the pandemic. So specifically, we've worked to support financially nonprofits and community-based organizations that have been on the front line of relief efforts. And we've also donated space to local governments, to hospitals, to and other relief organizations through our Space for Good program. And if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about our sustainability efforts. And I'll hand it back over to you, Sonia.
Thanks, Panke. So that's just an example of, I had talked about how we're really committed to doing the right thing for the planet. And we have some of the world's largest solar installations. We worked really hard to look for ways to reduce carbon emissions. And we all know we're now headed for another drought. So we think that, you know, our value of caring about the planet and doing the right thing is going to help us create some good outcomes at Hilltop. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about who we are and what our values are, and we thought, you know, you're here to talk to us about Hilltop, and as Darren said, you know, we haven't created a site plan yet. We're still in listening mode. We want to hear from you about what you'd like to see, but we thought it would be helpful for us to just talk to you a little bit about how we're thinking about it and what our approach is. Next slide, please. So our vision for this space is that it should be a vibrant mixed-use community. And we're super excited. We think this is a generational opportunity. It's a 77-acre piece of land in this beautiful city. And if I had to, you know, just state our goal in one sentence, I'd say we want to create a neighborhood here that everyone in this room and everybody who's watching can be proud of. And we think that there's an opportunity to do that by, you know, mixing a number of uses, right? I think we want a few different outcomes. We want to generate jobs through commercial and logistics uses. We want to bring some innovation to Richmond. We want to create retail and public spaces so that, you know, we can create destinations that you can walk to. I mean, I've heard so many people talk to me about how they used to go to Richmond Mall when they were young. And we want that again. We want this to be a place to be, right? Whether it's a street lined with restaurants or it's a public park with a sculpture where you could walk with your kids. That's important to us. So we want to bring in some of those elements. We know that you'd like to see housing there. So we want to be able to mix these few different uses there in an effective and functional way that makes sense. And we want to do that in partnership with you. And what we're doing right now, we're in the process right now of selecting a capable design team that can deliver on what I just talked about with your input and the city's input. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the shared goals, if you will, and the guiding principles that we want to hold ourselves up to. We feel that, you know, these are important for us to be able to achieve these outcomes. And we hope that you share that sentiment as well. So the first one is design, right? There's a reason why we feel like walking and experiencing and being in certain spaces, right? It's because they're designed in a certain way. They make us feel happy when we're at the park with our friends or watching a performance or near a beautiful sculpture. So we want to be able to create that, right? It's placemaking, it's about activation. And as I said, we're in the process of selecting a master planner who can bring that vision to life. The two other pillars of success are getting the right environmental and social outcomes, right? If there's anything we learned from the last year where we were all locked down during COVID is how important health and wellness is. So we want to be able to create spaces and think through how we design this community to enhance health and wellness, right? Maybe we bring some sports and recreation here. And we also want to be able to think about, create strategies, that help us be sustainable. And we have an opportunity to do that because it's a large piece of land, right? So how can we think about ways to conserve water, be more energy efficient, reduce carbon emissions? We want to think through these challenges and come up with some good, effective solutions. And last but not the least, we want to create something that is economically resilient. I mean, the reason that all of us are here today is because we want to see change, right? We don't want to see a dead mall there. We want to create uses that investors will invest in, and these things get built, and then they stay there, and they survive, and they thrive. So we want to be able to put all that together, and these are a lot of different pieces of a puzzle that come together with a lot of people rolling their sleeves up and doing the work that needs to be done. And I think you've taken the first step by showing up here, so thank you for that. And next slide, please. And then just to wrap it up, the next few months, all we're doing is listening to you, talking to city staff, talking to council members. We want to understand what your needs are, what your priorities are, and then we want to work with the design team to see how best we can put the pieces of the puzzle together. So we're looking forward to any questions or comments you have.
Thank you for that. I'd like to ask anybody that's got questions if they can line up over here. And in the meantime, I've got several questions here, but if the city council men would like to ask the question, I'd like to give them that opportunity first.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't have a question, but I would like to share a few comments. I'm very excited about this project. And those of you that remember, most of you not as old, but in the 70s, I was quite involved in the development of the Hilltop Shopping Center. Relatively new to the council. I just made a small contribution, I guess. But now, I never realized at one point I would be involved in the renovation or remodeling of the shopping center as we see it today. And I just want to say to Prologis that I'm very pleased and honored to be part of the council that will work with you. And this city should be very appreciative also. I wish you would go online and just do a Google about this company, and you will find out just how strong they are, not just here in the United States, but international. And if you notice also the diversity of that group, which don't usually come from high corporate governments. But this is a very fine, and we are very pleased to have such a strong organization coming into the city. Lastly, I just want to make a comment. Richmond, to some people, have been pretty much anti-business. And we need to understand that business is the catalyst of a city. It provides economic development. It provides jobs. It provides significant tax revenue. When we first got the Hilltop Shopping Center, we were talking about $1 million just in sales taxes alone. That's at the beginning. $1 million plus in property tax. So when you have an organization to come into here in this city and bring that kind of energy and that kind of opportunity, just think how many employees in Richmond that are unemployed are going to have an opportunity to come and work for this organization. So I hope that this community don't become negative like some of the emails that I've been receiving. No on Prologis. That's not Richmond. We are pro-development, we're pro-business, and we appreciate companies that come in here and provide such a tremendous opportunity for all of our citizens, as well as the city of Richmond and the tax revenue. So let's work with Prologis. Let's make sure this is one of the finest shopping ventures in the Bay Area, if not the state or the nation. So thank you again for your willingness to come in and invest your money into the city of Richmond. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your support, your kind words.
Mr. Martinez, you have a question or comment?
Question and a statement. First of all, I want you to understand that diversity brings different understandings of exactly what's going on. What he sees as anti-business, I see as looking for the right business. So anytime it seems like it's anti-business, it's because the business isn't offering Richmond the sort of things that we want. Now, what I like about you is that you're having a conversation with us. You're asking the community what we want. This is the kind of business we want. We want a business that is willing to sit down, talk to the community, ferret out all the different possibilities, and present them, you know, after we've had that conversation. In other words, we need to dream together, and this dream needs to be brought to fruition together. And I appreciate this conversation. And as you can probably surmise, I'm not anti-business, but I am looking for the right business. And so far, you're showing me that you are. So let's continue working that way. So my question is, what sort of timeline do you see in terms of reaching out to the community and in terms of coming up with a vision that you would be presenting to us?
Thank you. Thank you, both council members. Really appreciate your comments and support, and we're looking forward to working with you. In response to your question, we're going to work in collaboration with the city as they go through their specific plan process. So I'll talk to just the next 6-month plan. So the next 2 to 3 months, we're going to be involved in a community engagement process. We've engaged a polling firm that's going to reach out to different subsections of Richmond. We're working through the city to have community events such as these. We'll have some more workshops with our architect when they have something to show. And that's what we'll do in the next 3 to 6 months. We'll hear from the city. We'll create some proposals. We'll work with the city staff, and then we'll come back to you to see what you think. Then we'll go back again. So it's going to be iterated in the next 3 to 6 months. And then we'll see where we are in terms of the specific plan process and our design process. And we would like to move as quickly as possible and start and move this project as soon as we can. But I would expect that all this would take roughly 1 to 2 years.
One more comment. The way I've experienced development from the council point of view is that we're basically left in the dark until everything is ready to be approved, and then we get all the plans and everything, and we have to decide yes or no, without really having an understanding of how it came to be. And so I think we need to change that so that the entire city council is aware of the process and is able to add their comments, because we have conversations with our constituents, so a lot of times we know things that you don't learn from the meetings because not everyone comes to these meetings. It's basically the people who are invested in being influential, whereas the regular person only hears about it, as a side conversation, and then they say, what? And so I'd like to stop that what, and so that we can have more, wow.
Our goal is to be as transparent as we can throughout the entire process. So we take those comments to heart, and I think you've seen to date our outreach is going to be nonstop, and it's going to be very communicative, very direct, very upfront, and ultimately very transparent. So we look forward to continuing those conversations and keeping you apprised all the council apprised of what's going on day to day.
Mr. President, may I interject a couple of comments briefly? I suspect the audience may be questioning why Nat Bates and Eduardo Martinez are here and not a host of other council members. Well, first, we do have a Brown Act that we can only have 3 council members in one location at one time. But more important, this particular district that you live in, everybody, I think, know that we went to district elections this past year. So, Fairmede and Hilltop do not have a representative other than the fact that both Eduardo, myself, and Johnson were elected at large. So we continue to represent the entire city. And more importantly, this particular district that the Hilltop Shopping Center is located is District 2, of which I am the representative of that district in Point Richmond, Parkchester, North Richmond, and so forth. So that's primarily the reason why the 2 of us here is that we continue to represent the entire city.
Yeah, I'd like to add also, there was a question if other city council members were invited, and every one of them were invited. The mayor was invited to sit in the audience, and unfortunately, they had other obligations. So these 2 gentlemen and Demlis Johnson do represent our district, and so it was important to get these 2 gentlemen up here, and we're lucky to have them. So that being said, I do have a lot of questions that came in from social media, and a couple of them are like, will this project be built with union labor? Will the residents be able to work on these job sites? And how long will this project, or how many jobs will this project create?
So Prologis fully supports a union labor project. We've already started discussions with the Contra Costa building trades. Those are going well. And historically, we've been pro-union in Northern California, and we expect that partnership to continue at the Hilltop Mall. As it relates to construction jobs, we estimate roughly 1,000 to 2,000, and it's depending on the ultimate site plan. Construction jobs over, what Samita said, call it a 2 to 4 year period, depending on the length or what we build. But I think a good number for rough estimate is that 1,000 to 2,000 jobs.
Okay, we have a question from the audience.
Well, thank you for attending today. My name is Cesar Zepeda. I represent the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council. And overall in the city of Richmond and everywhere, the heart of the cities are the small businesses. Back when the mall was first created, many people got mad at it because they believe that the small businesses everywhere else in the city took a hit, because everyone came to shop at the shiny new thing, which was Hilltop Mall. What do you see in terms of working with small businesses, both at the Hilltop Mall site and whatever it may become, but also importantly with the other small businesses around, so we don't have that repeat, right? Let's learn from that history and uplift our whole community with this shiny brand new project that will be coming soon.
That's a great question. We need your help. So we're going to call on you to help us with those small businesses. We, in our portfolio, and I'm speaking specifically for logistics, we have 5,000 customers across the globe. So we have a subset of what we would call small businesses in the logistics trade. That's only one component of this project. So when it comes to the other components, that's where we would offer up to the community, what sort of small businesses can we come together to produce? And I know we're in the early stages of what that really looks like, because we haven't fully vetted our plan. But again, I think it comes down to how can we do this together? Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. I'll just add to that. So as an example, one of the interim uses that we were considering was, and we wanted to get the community's input on that, was to have, food trucks, like create like a little group of food trucks, which becomes almost like a small food market, if you will, and then they keep rotating, and those are all small business owners. So that's one way of engaging with small businesses and creating a lively activation strategy, at least in the interim. So that's one example on how we can even have it in as part of the permanent development. And as Darren said, I think we'll look for your support and help. If there is an organization that can help connect us to these small businesses, then we can start connecting the dots on where they fit in.
I also have a question, just came in. This is a little bit of a dirty question, and dirty being, there's been a lot of complaints about Amazon trucks and allegations that you're Amazon's landlord, and people are asking, will you be able to do anything about the traffic and congestion from the Amazon trucks and the garbage floating around the area?
Yeah, on the Amazon trucks, so I think the process that we understand we're going to be following is this: there will be a full impact study done for the Hilltop area, and there's going to be a traffic impact analysis, an air quality impact analysis, and we're going to work actively to mitigate any kind of impacts that are identified. That is the process followed by the city, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure we're supporting that. I hope that answers your question.
We have another question from the audience.
Yeah, my name is George Mitchell, and I am in the union. And my question to you is that in most cities, and to the councilman as well, in most cities they start at their hiring is from the community first. Can you guarantee us that you'll start hiring within our community before you go outside?
So thank you, George. We can certainly do our best efforts. You know, we've got a program in place that would certainly lead us that way. It's hard to guarantee kind of anything, but in general, I think, you know, we'd love to have the discussion, and we'd love to get you and, you know, the community locally, the residents, involved early, so that we can all but guarantee they get hired.
And I think there's a 25% local hire requirement that Richmond has, and we'll definitely be adhering to that. So we actually looking for the unions. We asked the unions that question: can you assure us that we'll be able to get people from Richmond to work on these jobs? So we'd love to get your support on this.
Okay, all right.
Another question from the audience?
No, my question goes to your support of the community and really to the council members. And I understand you guys are going to be doing some sort of development, but how do you change the mindset of a community where the youngsters do donuts and sideshows and it's uncomfortable to even walk? Why would I want to, like my daughter and I, we walk, but I'm literally holding her next to me, teaching her how to walk through a community where people are literally reckless drivers. And so people, and when I say that, I want to, let me even mitigate that. Let me say that people are always in a hurry, to the point where they have no care for the residents. And so that to me is a quality of life issue. And I'm wondering, how do you support us as residents with something like that in your business? Because right now, I will walk with my daughter up to the mall because we go to Firestone when I go to get my car serviced, but I don't feel comfortable. That's my point. And so how do we change that mindset? Because right now, Richmond seems to be a place where the community doesn't respect it. It doesn't respect its own city. They poop in their own city. So
Thank you.
that's what I'm asking you for.
Tough one.
I think thank you for expressing your concerns about, you know, how things are there. I think there was a security and a safety concern he expressed, and the police chief was just talking before that, so a relevant question. I wish it had been asked when she was here. From our perspective, when we think about the new development, we want to encourage people to walk and bike so that there aren't cars just driving by. We want to create spaces where hopefully someone on a skateboard actually has a separate space to go and do what they need to, so they're not on a street, you know, intersecting a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. So that's what we would do. We would design spaces to encourage people walking and living in a safe way.
And I would add, too, activating the mall should change the culture. And hopefully the stimulus that we can bring together will clean up some of the issues that were just described.
Another question?
Comment more than question. Appreciate that. Just a little bit of history for you. Right now in West Contra Costa County, we have a $2.4 billion school bond program repairing or replacing 53 schools. Pretty good sized project. And they've got 40% local hire agreements that have been in place since 2003, and also using local vendors and contractors as much as possible, even to the point of helping to train local contractors so that they can be of use on yours. At the Chevron refinery, when they have like a $1.2 billion modernization project and the many other billion-dollar projects they've had over the decades, so they've had local hire agreements as part of their permitting process. But even more importantly, or as much as importantly, we don't need 1,000 or 2,000 cars coming into this neighborhood from the construction workers. So they will bring in buses out in Pittsburgh, Antioch, Concord, Martinez, Vallejo, Fairfield, to bring the people in at no cost to them. And it's been extremely popular, extremely helpful, and it helps to free up our streets and the air that we breathe. So it's something you might want to consider.
Thank you for that. I did get another question in, and then we'll give it back to the audience. People have asked for years about a grocery store. We used to have grocery stores up here, and then what's happening with the freeway sign? It's filled with graffiti. Are you guys going to address that?
We've heard and we've seen the freeway signs, so we are working on replacing that, where we have someone designing it right now so that when it's replaced, it's something that everybody is happy with. And the other question was about the grocery store. So I would say yes, I see no reason why we couldn't put a really nice grocery store there. And if there are specific suggestions or stores that there is a preference for, we'd love to hear from the community. We've already heard from a few different food providers who are interested in being in Richmond also. So that's a yes. Yeah.
Great. Next question.
I have a few comments over here. I've been living in this area since 1950. 1950, there was the most beautiful city around the Bay Area, and the crime was low. At that time, there was no killing. I used to live over there in 4th Street and McDonald and walk in the middle of the night across the railroad, working in North Richmond. And that was perfectly safe. And my uncle used to own a restaurant over there at McDonald, Port and McDonald. And they closed the restaurant at 2 o'clock in the morning. They walked to the 1st Street and Barrett, that's where they living, and that was perfectly safe. So all those crimes, they've been coming. But in that time, there was a lot of work. So that's something that the council need to do to bring jobs over here to the city. I'm just going to name a couple of them. There was the Ford Company over here, which was employing almost 2,000. There was the Safeway Company, another 2,000. There was American Radio, where I worked for 17 years. There was another 1,700. Just a few to name. Over here where we stayed, there was a grocery store. And I moved to this area in 1963, and this was the most beautiful area. Everything is deteriorated. There was 4 hospitals. Now we don't have it. If we don't belong to Kaiser, we don't have a hospital. Where are we going to go? We had to go to the Concord or Waldo Creek, and if we cannot drive, how are we going to go there? We're getting old and not younger, but that's the most thing that we need in this area, to have a hospital and to have a community involvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please.
It's hard to go after that one, but yeah, I just wanted to say I took Councilmember Bates' advice in sitting in the audience. I didn't know much about Prologis prior to coming here, so I looked them up on my phone. You guys are a pretty big establishment there, so, and thank you for coming to our community. Question I have is, have you guys or your company developed a mall in a culturally diverse community as we have here?
So we have not developed a mall to date. In fact, this is kind of a theme that you're seeing coming out of COVID, is the mall closures around the country. So this is really a newfound project for anybody. So that's one. Number two, yeah, we are in a lot of diverse cities. We're all over the Bay Area. We could name 15 cities, but you can imagine San Francisco all the way down to San Jose, wrapping around the Bay through Oakland into Richmond. And that carries the same all the way down to Southern California. We're in the central LA with Compton. We're pretty much, we are the largest owner of industrial on the planet. And by virtue of that, we have rooftops in every city, and we take pride in kind of being everywhere with what you said, diverse communities, diverse backgrounds, diverse trades. And certainly we're going to bring that expertise, or at least those learnings from those communities, and hopefully we can come together with your thoughts to build a successful project.
Thank you.
So we've got another audience member, but before we get to that, there was a question that came in, and it's asking, what percentage of the 77 acres, does Prologis want for their distribution center?
Well, I don't think we've decided what percentages. Like we just said, I think that's something we need to workshop with the community, see what are the different uses we want to see, how do they lay out, and how does all of this work in a functional, efficient, and aesthetic manner. So it's TBD.
Oh, next question.
Hi, my name is April Roy, and I'm here from Hilltop Village. I'm the president of the association. And thank you again for giving us an opportunity. April Roy?
A little closer to the mic, please.
Oh, is that better?
It's high, yeah, better.
Sorry. My name is April Roy, and I'm president of the Hilltop Village Homeowners Association. And we know we have people that are within walking distance and are really anxious to be able to work with you. And I certainly appreciate what you're doing and in this outreach that you're starting, and I would like to know how quickly we can actually schedule you for meetings within our HOA. And I'm talking specifically about Hilltop Village, but obviously others as well. And what would be that method for us to get in touch with you and get going?
We had a slide up in which you had all our contact information. Okay. We also have one inquiry email address. If you just Google Hilltop Prologis, you'll see that. So you can contact us through that or directly. And we're looking forward to meeting and engaging with the community. So we'll set it up.
Wonderful. I had a whole list of questions, but you were answering as I was going. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Jan, you're next. This is Jan from the RNCC and her neighborhood council.
Good evening. I'm the president of the Richmond Neighborhood Coordinating Council, but I wear many hats in the city of Richmond. One of them I wear is as the project director for a group called Richmond Trees. We plant street trees in the city of Richmond. So I just want to offer that we would love to come up here and plant some trees for you. The more trees we get in here, and I know you're very environmentally sound on that, so we can help you get lots of trees. So I just wanted to let you know about that.
Thank you. That's great.
If I may.
We've got Mr. Martinez over here.
Yes. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Better.
I understand that Kmart is still an owner of part of Hilltop. Is that correct?
Walmart.
Or are they just tenants?
So Walmart is currently a tenant.
Okay, so you're complete owners of the entire area?
We are,
okay,
correct.
So then my question is, what are your plans for working with Kmart in terms of the development of Walmart?
Well,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So currently Walmart's under a long-term lease. That lease will be honored in its full, and we'll work with Walmart on their long-term needs for the property. However, they do have a long-term lease. So at this point, it's naturally expected that they would stay. If that changes or if there's a way to work with them, then we're open to it, and we look, and yeah.
And when you say long-term, what, how many years, and do they have option to extend?
They do, yeah. It's a long time, so we can call it, with options, at least 40 years.
Look, we can sit here and ask questions all day, all evening long. There's going to be plenty of meetings in the future, and they did offer their contact information in the slides if you want to review the video again. And I'd really, before I let you go, by the way, the property is going to be sitting dormant, and someone did ask me, would you guys be open to maybe having car shows, flea markets, farmers markets, that kind of thing while it's being waiting to be developed?
We are. Please contact us with the information of
will.
those vendors if you can. I think we've already reached out to a farmer's market type of provider. We've reached out to the food truck providers. We've talked to Jamtown, who are the sports activation providers. So if there are others you'd like to send to us, we'd love to talk to them.
Is there anything you guys would like to add in closing, Prologis or City Councilman? Anything you'd like to add, Nat, or?
No, just that I'm glad that you're reaching out to the community and that you're open to various options. I would like to have a conversation with you just so that I can share what my vision is, which is neither here nor there. It's just another vision of what it might be. But if you can have an understanding of what city council members envision, you might have a better understanding of where things might go.
I would just like to add that this is the first of several meetings with the community, of which I assume Prologis would be associated with. We have some 60 neighborhood councils, and we're very proud of the work that each one of the neighborhood councils contribute to the city. As indicated, Jan is the president of the Coordinated Neighborhood Councils, and she has a very strong neighborhood council as Art. I think that those two neighborhood councils, maybe Point Richmond and Portchester, they're the most active neighborhood councils, as well as Hilltop also. So hopefully at some point we would like for Prologis to present their ideas before the full city. As I mentioned last time when we had the neighborhood councils, that although this is in Hilltop, this is also not only Hilltop, but it's a city. And if you want to go further, it's a regional, because we're going to be expecting support, patronage from the entire regional area. So we want to extend the opportunity for as many individuals as possible to participate and give their ideas. And I think as we open up that opportunity, we will conclude with a much better project, one in which we all will be able to look back and take pride. So that's the intentions that I hope that we move forward with.
Yeah, I appreciate those words. Is there anything else you guys would like to add, or?
Yeah, I would just leave with, we really mean it when we say it. We're in listening mode. We want everybody's ideas. We're open to all interim uses on the property. So if you have an idea, please contact our email address. We would like to do this again in another setting. And we are, we're here to help. And you've got, Bonke, Samita, myself, there's a greater team on the screen. And we're going at this together. And I really mean that when I gave that quote. If you want to go farther, go together. And that includes the community. So we embrace your ideas, we embrace your culture, we embrace everything about Richmond, and please help us because we need you in this journey.
Thank you.
It would be a great segue to tell everybody in the viewing audience that right now is a really good time to get involved with your neighborhood council. You can go to the city website, find out where you live and who your neighborhood council president is, and contact them if you have some time to spare. We need all the help we can get. You have to live in a specific neighborhood, so is there a question? You have to live in a specific neighborhood to work with that neighborhood council. So I encourage you to reach out to your neighborhood councils, and you'll be able to go to meetings like this one and speak to Prologis and have their ear. I would also encourage you to start watching the city council meetings and the task force meetings because I really think defunding the police is not a bad idea. I mean, and re-educating the police may not be a bad idea, but cutting the police, for me, is a problem. So I encourage you guys to start watching the city council meetings and emailing the city council members and getting to know them. And so with that being said, I want to thank Prologis, the city council people, everybody in the audience, all the neighborhood council presidents for coming, and I think that's it. Thank you, thank you.